Hello, I'm Nate, aka B-Tier Mutineer. I make guides and discussion videos about RPGs, and today I want to talk about my least favorite quests in Dragon Age Origins. I previously discussed my top 5 favorite quests. Since Origins is my all-time favorite game, some people may think that it's all sunshine and roses and I must like everything about it. I don't. There are lots of things to criticize about it, lots of things I wish were better. I use a lot of mods, bug fixing one, as well as tweaks to gameplay to make the combat feel better, and visual enhancing mods too, not just to make the game look prettier or higher resolution, but to make it feel more immersive. And still, there are things I dislike about the game, even after it's extensively modded. But despite all its flaws that I am very much aware of, it's still my favorite game. It's absolutely fine to love something and still be able to see its faults. One day, I'll make a huge video in which I talk about Origins in a long retrospective analysis, mentioning both the good and bad, and neutral. But today is not that day. Today, we're focusing on the quests I dislike the most. Consider this a little preview of the kinds of negative things I will talk about when I get around to that huge analysis. Before we begin, I'm not including the origin stories or the DLC quests, but none of them would be part of this list anyway. I'm also not including quests that I think are just boring, such as tiny side quests that just require you to go and kill some enemies, retrieve an item, or otherwise check off some extremely simple task with often little to no story. I understand why those quests exist as part of many RPGs. They can be fine little diversions, or things that give you XP, money, or loot, and occasionally give you a snippet of lore or world building that would have otherwise been difficult to include. But they are irrelevant to the list of disliked quests, because to me they're just meh. I don't feel anything other than perhaps boredom. With that explanation out of the way, let's get into the list. I'll be similarly ordering them from 5 to 1, with 1 being my most disliked. Number 5. Unbound. This is a side quest that requires you to obtain some notes from adventurers in order to uncover an ancient mystery. That makes it sound far more interesting than it actually is. All you have to do is get 2 notes from dead bodies and talk to the nervous adventurer in Tapster's Tavern. Afterwards, the quest will appear in your journal and will point you towards a quaint hovel in one of the alleys of Denerim. There you will find and have to kill Gaxkang. He is an ancient demon, part of the Forbidden Ones, some of the first demons that ancient mages sought out in the Fade, who seemingly taught mages the practice of blood magic. Gaxkang has been luring curious adventurers to him to get them killed, and you are no exception. You have to fight the demon, who is quite powerful, being one of the highest rank enemies in the game, an elite boss. Upon being killed, he will drop the Keening Blade longsword, as well as have a chance to drop the Fade Wall shield. Fade Wall is a great shield, but unfortunately in the vanilla game, it is not a guaranteed drop, and so if you really want it, you will have to save scum and potentially have to reload and kill Gaxkang multiple times before you obtain it. I always hate rare drops for unique items in a game that doesn't have respawning enemies, and I really dislike anything that encourages save scumming. If an item is unique and is only found as part of a single quest as loot from a powerful enemy, there really isn't any reason for that item to not be a guaranteed drop, especially since this is an obscure quest that very few players would find without the help of guides or the wiki. Reward curious players who take the time to interact with everything and who also have the power to kill one of the strongest enemies in the game. This quest is at the very bottom of my list because while I don't like it, it's such an obscure quest that I can just ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist. The lore of the Forbidden Ones is interesting, but you're only getting it in the form of codex entries, and when you find Gaxkang, you don't really get to talk to him to find out more information, or have multiple ways to solve the quest, such as a non-violent way to intimidate or persuade him to stop getting people killed, or perhaps making a deal with him in exchange for power. These are of course my ideas of how I would improve a quest like this, but the general reason I am dissatisfied with it is that it doesn't feel rewarding enough to do from a role-playing or story perspective. Number 4. Ogren's Old Flame. This is Ogren's companion quest, and a big reason why I don't like it is because I don't enjoy Ogren's character, at least the way he's portrayed for cheap laughs. Perpetually drunk dwarven warrior who likes to drink, fight, and have sex with women, and he makes lots of sexually inappropriate comments about and towards women. The thing is, with his backstory as a proud warrior of Orzammar who got left behind by his paragon wife and house, became an alcoholic trying to cope with all of that, and disgraced himself as a warrior, Ogren could have had some very interesting character development. Instead, his companion quest amounts to you being his wing person at an inn where his ex-girlfriend works, and getting her to give him another chance. Nothing throughout the whole game has any effect on changing Ogren to drink less, get over his many traumas from his life in Orzammar, or at least treat women with respect. And this quest really only gets a lady interested in boning him again, resulting in him having children. But then, if you play the Awakening expansion, he's there and wants to join the Wardens, so clearly his relationship isn't going all that well if he's running towards a death sentence to escape it. I'm not saying the idea of the quest itself isn't good. In fact, you can see a similar quest done well in the Outer Worlds, where you can help one of your companions, Parvati, go on dates with a person she's interested in romantically. The quest is cute, funny, and also reveals a side to Parvati you wouldn't otherwise get to see, while at the same time being respectful towards both her and her love interest, Junlei. Number 3 is a pair of side quests, Summoning Sciences and Watchguard of the Reaching. Both quests are found in the Circle Tower during the Mage main quest and are of course entirely optional. That's why I'm putting them still relatively low on the list. The reason I dislike both of these is that they're puzzles in a way, and in another way they're really annoying task sequences. Both quests involve first finding some apprentice notes that are strewn around the tower. Afterwards, you have to interact with certain objects in the game, aka click on them, in a certain order. Watchguard of the Reaching involves clicking on 4 statues in a set order and then going back to the ground floor, aka apprentice quarters, and clicking on the basement door which will spawn a demon to fight. Not really interesting, though the demon drops Usaris, which is a pretty good greatsword, especially against dragons. Summoning Sciences involves doing 3 summoning rituals, which are just clicking on certain items in the library in a specific order, with each ritual getting longer because it needs you to go through a longer series of object interactions. The first summon is a spirit hog that dies immediately and drops a garnet gem. The second summon is the Trickster Whim, a rogue-looking demon that disappears and creates the Unintended Consequences side quest because the Trickster Whim ends up slaughtering merchants on the roads, and the Warden can accept a quest from the Chantry to go kill this creature, which will drop the Magus Warboots when killed. The third summon is a Fate Rifter that looks like a Berescarn, which will attack you and will drop the Charged Schmidt's Mage Gloves when killed. There is also an Easter egg final ritual that summons someone called Arl Foreshadow, and if you steal from him successfully, you get the codex entry, The Notes of Arl Foreshadow. This whole quest is so involved for really not very much in terms of payoff unless you're really interested in the items you can get. As with Unbound, I simply just ignore the existence of these quests and rush through the tower, not stopping to do these puzzly, gimmicky kind of tasks. I admit the first time I did these quests, they were interesting to do, although I was expecting something far greater as a payoff than having to fight a demon at the end of one, and having to fight a demon as part of a side quest that the other one leads to. At the very least, I was expecting some interesting spirit or demon to interact with in meaningful dialogue. Number 2, the Arl of Redcliffe / the Urn of Sacred Ashes. I'm not talking about the entirety of the Arl of Redcliffe, just a portion after you've dealt with the Connor situation and are forced to go search for the Urn of Sacred Ashes to cure Arl Eamon. My main gripe with this portion of the quest is that up until here you have a choice of whether you want to save the village or not, as well as how involved you are in helping people prepare for the undead attack if you do choose to help defend Redcliffe. You also have choices on how to solve the possessed Connor situation, whether by getting the help of mages from the circle, doing a blood ritual with Jowan, or simply killing the possessed boy. However, after you've done all of that, you're completely railroaded into going on a journey to look for what could very well not exist: the legendary ashes of the Prophet Andraste, said to be able to cure any ailment. All of this only to restore one man to consciousness, just because he can help you deal with Loghain and Ferelden's nobility. No matter how despicable you've been to Redcliffe and its people so far, you have to cure Eamon. There is no option to declare Eamon dead and let his brother Tegan assume the position of Arl and let Tegan help you prepare for the Landsmeet against Loghain and everything else. The interesting thing is that Tegan does mention such an option as a line of dialogue. He says when you click on him,
"It is good you resolve this demon business. Now we must either revive the Arl or allow Ban Tegan to take his place."
But the choice doesn't actually exist. I understand from a game development perspective that adding such a choice presents a few problems. First, it renders the whole Urn of Sacred Ashes questline entirely optional, which means some players will miss out on what is quite a large area to explore, lots of enemies to kill, including the High Dragon on the mountaintop, lots of good loot, as well as certain side quests completely removed from that player's experience of the game. Second, due to this, it presents issues with balancing the rest of the game. If the player skips out on the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest, they will be lower level, as well as have less money and gear. This is, of course, looking at the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest in the form that it has in the finished game, designed to be a full main quest. Finally, there is also the cost of voice acting, animations, and cutscenes to take into consideration. The whole Landsmeet portion of the game would have to be built twice. Once with Eamon being the main NPC who has a large role to play within the story, especially the cutscenes and dialogues, and once with Tegan taking the same role. This would involve writing 2 different ways in which these characters would tackle the same situation, record voice lines for both of them, set up dialogues and cutscenes, rig certain character animations, and so on. However, I still think this option could have been done in a simpler way that doesn't require quite so many resources and doesn't affect the game's balance quite so much. Eamon could simply still feel weak after being cured and thus leave most of the talking with the other nobles to Tegan, and you only get some extra conversations with Eamon as he discusses the situation with you and gives you some advice. But Tegan would ultimately act as the main talking guy during the Landsmeet. Perhaps if you cure Eamon, you get a bit of extra support during the Landsmeet because he's better known and respected by other nobles. That could be a fun little consequence regarding your choice of how to deal with the Arl situation. In terms of the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest, I would make the questline smaller, change some of the locations of certain quests, such as the drakes that can give you drakescale armor. They could be found in the Brazilian forest instead, since there is also a dragon present there. I would also add that there should be a way to fail the gauntlet and not be able to reach the ashes, so that even a player who wants to try to cure Eamon with this ancient magical artifact could end up failing to do so for role-playing reasons. There could also be other side quests that the player gets in their journal, which can lead them, at the very least, towards exploring Haven and the mountain, leading them to be more likely to find and fight the high dragon on the mountaintop, as well as come into contact and likely confrontation with the dragon cultists. Perhaps the Chantry can declare Brother Genetivi missing, and searching for him leads you to finding him at Haven, with him insisting to try and find the ashes in the nearby temple, which shows you there is more to explore in that area. Perhaps there is some other kind of quest, something to actually help and join the dragon cultists if you wish to. These are just some ideas based on the current iteration of the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest as it appears in the game, but of course if you could go back and redesign this portion as more of an optional subquest of Arl of Redcliffe that can be failed, it could even look significantly more different. There's also a main quest that I really would have loved to see instead that would be set in the mountainous areas of Ferelden, but I'll leave that discussion for another time. I also have to mention that I did not enjoy the riddles and the bridge puzzle during Urn of Sacred Ashes, because once you've found the right answer to the riddles, they're not fun anymore. And the bridge puzzle is just a waste of time, and frankly it wasn't even fun the first time I did it. I had to go on each tile one at a time and write down on a piece of paper which parts of the bridge they enabled, then very slowly figure out how to get someone across the chasm. Not really a great puzzle design to begin with, and certainly increasingly less fun in every subsequent playthrough. Number 1. Broken Circle. I'm not talking about the entire Mage vs Templar main quest here, although I don't find it all that interesting to have to go up multiple levels of a tower just to kill demons and abominations, but I do think there are interesting considerations in the choice between mages and Templars, and the quest offers good role-playing opportunities here. What I'm most disappointed and annoyed by are 2 specific portions of this quest. The part where you meet Wynne at the bottom of the tower and are forced to either add her to your party or kill her, and the Shapeshifting Nightmares portion of the Lost in Dreams subquest. Let's address the Wynne situation first. You come across Wynne very early after you enter the apprentice quarters in the Circle Tower. She has managed to protect a few apprentice mages by erecting a barrier that is keeping most demons and abominations from reaching them. The problem is that she only agrees to remove the barrier if you let her come along with you on your journey through the tower, meaning you are forced to replace one of your 3 party members with her. There is no way to persuade or intimidate Wynne into remaining with the apprentices or else going off on her own. If you don't want to take her along in your party, your only other option is to kill her. And if you attack her, you will also have to kill 2 of the apprentice mages there, the ones who aren't children. I don't know why BioWare chose to do this and didn't offer a third option that lets Wynne live and lets you proceed without her as a party member, but it feels really restrictive in a way that doesn't really mesh well with the rest of the game. The only other time something like this happens is during the Dwarven main quest, where for some reason, Oghren becomes a locked party member when you reach the Anvil of the Void area. I don't agree with that there either, but at least Oghren is only a forced companion for a small portion of the main quest, instead of for the duration of the whole thing, as is the case with Wynne. I don't really like Wynne's character very much, so I end up killing her in most of my playthroughs simply because she refuses for my character to go forward without her. The other part I absolutely hate from this quest is the Fade portion, specifically the nightmares that act as puzzles you have to solve by going back and forth between them, unlocking various shapeshifting forms, going back and forth some more, and killing some bosses. During my first playthrough of Origins all the way back in 2010, I got stuck here and had to look up a walkthrough because I could not understand what I was supposed to do. In subsequent playthroughs, I knew what I had to do, but absolutely dreaded it because it takes so long and you have to keep backtracking through the Fade, especially if you want to get the bonus attribute fonts, which are technically optional, but offer a very significant power increase that you can't really ignore. Because of this, ever since 2011, when I discovered mods, I have been using Skip the Fade by HDHD, which skips this chore/puzzle portion of the quest and allows you to just interact with the companion nightmares, which are fun to do as they are personal, flavorful character moments where you get to find out a few little details about your companions. You have heard me complain about puzzles throughout most of this list, and that's because puzzles that only have one correct solution, one approach to get to the solution, and there is no way to bypass the puzzle through other means, very quickly get stale over the course of multiple playthroughs. I think that the strength of good RPGs is their replayability, which comes from being able to make different choices in everything, from combat, exploration, quests, dialogue, romances, etc. A static puzzle does not add to the replayability factor of an RPG. I think it's fine if puzzles like this exist in RPGs, but only as part of side quests. Even so, I still end up thinking of those puzzles as chores after the first playthrough, though I think this could be somewhat mitigated by the side quests also adding something else interesting to the mix, such as character moments, interesting lore or world building, or other choices you can make during the quest that make it feel significant enough as a role-playing opportunity for your character. As a bonus little mention, I also really dislike quests and encounters that force you to kill NPCs that are people, aka not monsters. I complained about that in regards to having to kill Wynne if you don't want her to tag along in the tower, but this is a problem that persists throughout multiple parts of the game. And interestingly enough, there are some encounters during which characters will surrender if you bring their HP down to a certain threshold. The bandits in Lothering, Logain soldiers in the Lothering Tavern, Logain's men at the entrance to Orzammar. There is also that one blood mage that survives the fight and asks for mercy in the Circle Tower, though only wardens of some specific specializations are able to let her live in the vanilla game. Swift's runner little pack of werewolves in the forest also retreats whenever you beat them down. Zathrian surrenders if you fight him in order to make him lift the werewolf curse. The thugs in Dusttown, who have the token to enter the Carter hideout, also surrender. So there are clearly plenty of examples from the game where even if you're in combat with people, they can surrender or flee rather than just the game forcing you to kill them. I would have liked to see more of this in the game, because as I get older and more emotionally mature, it really feels a bit icky to kill so many people in cold blood, instead of getting them imprisoned for their crimes, or letting them redeem themselves, or simply letting them live if they've had a change of heart and do not have any hostile intentions towards you anymore. I particularly like that this is very much the case with most human NPCs in games like Risen from Piranha Bytes. You don't need to kill most people in the game, you can just knock them unconscious and loot them for a quest item, or else get them to agree to something or manage to progress a quest after you've fought and proven that you can best them in combat. In any case, these have been my most disliked quests from Dragon Age Origins, with explanations as to why I dislike them and ideas on how I personally would have tried to improve them. I'm very interested to know what your least favorite quests in Origins are, as well as why. Let me know down below. If you're looking forward to more videos about Dragon Age as well as other RPGs, do remember to subscribe and leave a like and comment while you're at it too. They really help. A special thank you to my members who help keep this channel running. I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider joining the channel as a member to support me and unlock perks like early access to videos. This has been B Tier Mutineer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.